the Navy ferried me up to Lady Gulf with MacArthur when he was coming home. We shall return. Well, he and the Navy never got together. MacArthur and the Navy fought, so when they put MacArthur in the Lady Gulf, the Navy says, we don't have enough boats. So I gave him about 5 escort carriers and a bunch of DEs and everything else. And Halsey took off for Alaska because they told him that the Japs were going to take the Aleutians. So they turned around and come back into Lady Gulf, and man, they plastered those escort carriers and everything. It was a mess. But MacArthur returned. He got there. They dumped us in there, 5 of us into LCPPs. So the guy, they heard us at night again. Everything's at night. We hit the beach somewhere. And the guy let the ramp down and says, it's as far as I go, fellas. Pitch black. He backed that thing off the beach. A young seaman was controlling it. And here we are. And down the line was some lakes. So we drifted down that way a little bit, and sure, heard they're unloading on the beach at Tacloban. And the trucks were coming off and loaded, so we had to commandeer a guy with a truck, colored fellow with a truck. The only way we could get him to stop. He says, I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. Well, I said, all we got to do is, everything at that time was on the beach. Tacloban had a strip, metal strip. Tanawon had a metal strip. And they were in a corner of the beach. So we finally, the 5 of us, about 2 o'clock in the morning, I guess, we finally get a hold on to this 6x, and we go into an area that had a dim lighted tent. I'll never forget that. And I was elected to investigate the tent. I walk in and here's a Tommy gun. The guy's got a Tommy gun on me right there. It was the flight that was on that strip, and here the guy was filling out the morning report for the flight. And he says, what the hell are you doing wandering around here at this time of night? I handed him a set of orders. He says, oh God, he says, I need some smart guys like that. He says, you know where I'd look for these guys? San Francisco. I said, I know, they just chased us out of there. So he calls in, hey, Pedro, must have been a Mexican fella. So he said, Pedro, set up a tent for these guys. Pedro was, I think he was half gas on local juice, and he sets up this squad tent with a pole. 5 of us go in the squad tent. It had been laying on the ground. It had more damn mosquitoes than we had. Oh, what a mess. Well, the next morning it was comical when we wake up. And he's back there, the captain's back there again. He says, well, I had a chance to look at the orders. He says, half of your 54s, which is multi-engine, and the other, and I think, well, I had a multi and single. So he says, you're going to stay here, and the other guy stays here. He was single. The other bunch of you can go over to Tacloban, which was Boyd, I think his name was Boyd, had 38s at that time. So this guy had 51s on Tanawon. I was only there for about, couldn't have been more than 3 or 4 weeks, because 51s were using them for ground support with the cooler in the bottom, and they were losing them like crazy. So they started out with 25. I think when I hit them, they had about 12. So I took one trip with them, and had the fun of being picked up by the guerrillas in Luzon, who put me on a fishing boat and sent me back to Lady.
So you were shot down?
Yeah. Oh, well, we were dropping napalm into the mountains off of Clark, to keep them from throwing shells on Clark. And we had the choice of, a friend of mine did the wrong thing. They were flying B-25, and you had the choice of pulling up after you dropped the napalm and go over the hill. And he squashed into the hill. So I said, there's no point in that, boy. So I flip up and go back. And hey, that cooler looked good. They got that cooler right away. So I ended up with a very unusual, good-looking woman with 25 guerrillas on Luzon, northern Luzon. And she said she was a hairdressing salon at that time in Manila. And she was going to get married to a sailor, U.S. sailor at that time, just before 41, before it happened. So she ended up marrying a Filipino doctor. And he had 25 guerrillas somewhere on the island, and she had 25 up here. And I said, boy, I don't know how long. Oh, well, of course, they relieved me of all the arms and everything. I said, so I don't know how a good-looking woman can control 25 males with these guys. She says, we don't have any problem. So I stuck me on a fishing boat, and I went back to Lady, which was a gamble because those fishing boats, they were chasing them all the time. I don't know how these guys managed. They did through the islands, and they got over there. Well, I was listed as missing, naturally. No clothes, no nothing. Everybody took care of that. Chow was with that group, was lousy, terrible. I was down to about 140 pounds. So the next day, the guy comes out and says, we've lost so many aircraft and pilots. We're disbanding this 51 group. And you guys, half of you can go to Tacloban, which is right next door. Or you can go to Combat Cargo, which is multi-engine. I said, man, at least they eat. They must eat well. So I went to, that was the best move I ever made. I went over to Combat Cargo.